Sometimes having fun is the most responsible thing you can do. The new Volvo S60 plug-in hybrid. For the road, for the planet.
Good afternoon and welcome to the BFM Enterprise Back to Business webinar series. My name is Audrey Raj. I'm a presenter and producer with the Enterprise team and also the host of Resource Center and Marketing Mojo on BFM. Now, before we go any further, let me thank the people who are making all of this possible today. The BFM Enterprise Back to Business webinar is presented to you by Volvo Cars, redefining freedom to move in a personal, sustainable, and safe way. And today's session specifically is sponsored by Sony Malaysia. So thank you guys for making this happen. Now, today's session is all about marketing in the new norm. Online presence is at an all-time high for businesses right now. So how do you ensure you have a solid marketing plan to stand out from the competition? Well, let me introduce you to the marketing gurus who are going to answer these questions and spark some new ideas for us moving forward. First up, we have Ramakrishnan, CN, Head of EXR and Partner at Entropia.
Hello, good afternoon.
Hey, Rama. Good afternoon. We also have Jan Wong, who's the founder of OpenMinds Resources, also a good buddy of mine.
Hi, Audrey. Good to be here.
Hey, Jan. And finally, from across the causeway, we have Simon Dale, Managing Director, Southeast Asia at Adobe.
Hi, Audrey.
Hey guys. Now, we're also streaming on YouTube Live. So if Facebook Live isn't working for you, you can join us over on Facebook. And I'd also like to ask all of you to post your questions to us on the Facebook comment section, and we will get our panelists to answer them accordingly. So guys, just to get started, what is the new normal in marketing, and how have marketing and advertising plans changed for businesses over these last 6 months? Rama, let's start with you.
Hi, good afternoon again. It's a pleasure to be with you all. In the new normal, actually, if I see new normal is a very tame word that most of us use just to make ourselves feel good, actually. There's nothing normal about what's going on here. And the new normal doesn't need to be something that used to be in the past. So at the moment, I feel that it is more of a tectonic shift that is happening right where we are standing, across categories, across the marketing value chain. And we are seeing almost a compression of almost 5 to 10 years of development, which COVID has sort of shrunk in the timeline for us in 2020 itself. But having said that, the more things change, the more they remain the same, as it is said. So in this case, I feel that there are 3 key things that have sort of shifted, but it's not like as if they were not there earlier. They're more into focus. One would be something what I call as agile planning. Because now the future is slightly uncertain. People are not sure about how things can shape up for each market and the category. So there is a lot of agile planning which is happening, which entails there is a shorter planning process. And then as the planning process evolve, you are much more in tune with changes and taking the cues from the market and evolving your marketing plan as we progress. So if you're not doing this, then probably you are losing out significantly. And second would be something about more empathy in communication. When we talk about communication strategy that most of the brands are taking into account, the empathy, the voice, the tone is all pretty evolved now compared to what it was earlier, and people are knowing that it is very, very critical to be with a purpose and do and less of gimmicks and more of actual hard hitting on ground and the work that matters. So these are the two key changes I feel which has happened in the marketing planning process. But Industry 4.0 is something which is happening parallelly as an overview on this, because we have to make sure that we are working with AI, we are working on automation, we are working on extended reality, and big data and IoT are also spaces in the marketing ecosystem that everybody needs to enhance and take charge of. And the compression has already happened, and we are already living in the new post-COVID era, actually. So,
right. We'll come back to that empathetic tone and messaging in a bit. But Jan, just want to check in on you. What's new in marketing for you? What has it been like in the new norm for you?
Well, I like what Rama said, right? That there's nothing normal about this new norm at all. That's so true. I mean, I'm just thinking about everything that's happening right now, even for us as a company. So much has happened, the way we organize the team, how business is being conducted, how sessions like this are conducted. I mean, just a couple of months back, if you talk about attending a webinar, everybody would be like, yeah, I prefer a physical event. And look, all of us are here online streaming, and we're doing just fine. I think one major thing that's happened that I think all of us can agree from a perspective of marketing and technology, this particular season has really fast-tracked all the developments that we're talking about. Just early this year, we were talking about how e-commerce is important, the rise of e-wallets, how all these individual players are trying very hard to educate brands and consumers to basically use these platforms. And everybody's like, let's watch, let's see, let's take some time, let me learn about it. Maybe it's not secure, blah, blah, blah. And today, all these things I was mentioned is now a necessity. And from a communication perspective, we've seen a rise of how brands are really trying to humanize their experience when they engage with their customers online. This is mainly because customers right now are taking a lot of this time, not just to reevaluate their own life per se, but they're also in a very sensitive state of mind. They're feeling a lot more anxiety, a lot more stress. So a lot of things that happens around the conversations of consumers are actually something where brands need to consider. It's no longer a time where a brand can just go out and just put sell, and expect people to buy, because people really expect the empathy notes to come in from a communication perspective. We have also seen brands that did better during this season of time as they use content as a means to build trust, to reassure customers. For example, helping customers really meet their basic needs, like telling them about the queue status, the stock availability, supporting different causes. And this type of content was seen as boring at one point of time, but now it's seen as a way where consumers actually appreciate, and it's a form of brand reaching out to consumers.
Right. Simon, what about you? I mean, you have a purview of the entire region, Southeast Asia. What have you noticed over these last 6 months?
Yeah, well, I mean, Rama and Jan have said quite a bit about it already, right? It's becoming a bit of a cliche now that so much digital transformation has happened in such a short space of time. We hear that a lot. So it's an acceleration of that focus on digitizing the last mile to the customer relationship, which people have talked about, and they say, yeah, it's important, and all of a sudden it's become a necessity. And it's not just making the digital connection. Certainly the getting the content right and getting the channel right is what we've seen our customers really think about more seriously. And consumers and our practitioners in the market are telling us that that's what they appreciate, that people are thinking about the message, they're thinking about the channel that they're going to engage with that message. To Jan's point, it's got to be helpful, it's got to be well thought through. And then all of these digital tools and technologies are the enablers that help that thing to improve and scale. Certainly, the market, we're both a practitioner in running our own business, but we also help other brands to power their digital marketing automation. And what we've seen there is this acceleration of this transition to thinking about, to Rama sort of mentioned it, exactly not just how do you engage with content, but when you engage with that content, how can you measure that engagement and listen to how the customer's engaging and learn from that and use that data to improve your personalization and your intimacy with your customers.
Right. Okay. Let's talk about trends. Are there any, well, post-pandemic, if you can call it that, post-pandemic trends that have popped up in the market? Anything that you didn't expect to see? Rama, we'll go back. We'll start with you again.
All right. As I said, it's not like as if it wasn't expected, but probably a lot of these trends were expected a few years later, which has come much faster than expected. So I would like to share, I think later on we'll get to know a few more data points, but there are a couple of few interesting things that has happened in the behavior that we consumers are going through. So for example, and this might seem very small, but it's got a very huge impact on how we plan our marketing, is the use of QR codes. All right, just by the user behavior of flipping open the phone, opening an app and scanning the location where you enter through My Sejatra app and so on and so forth, that has sort of again brought back this whole dead medium of QR code or visual triggers that you can get in, and now the consumer is very much attuned to accessing it. So that means that I can, as a marketer, make sure that every touch point becomes contactless, becomes more informative. There is a layer of information over everything, whether it's packaging or whether it's your retail outlet, and so on and so forth. So the information layer usage has suddenly seen a manifold increase, and we have used that in augmented reality quite a lot, which we can talk about later. But that is one point. And second point, which I saw is already the use of in-home consumption of media. So there is one very interesting data point which has come over in the last 3 months, wherein the usage of connected TVs at home, and where you can actually connect with the consumers through in-stream ads, that usage has surpassed desktop already over this last 3-4 months. So that becomes a very viable channel for any of the marketers to tap into, which is connected TV in the household. So in your digital planning, that should be a part of the overall mix very, very clearly. And these things were expected anyhow, but these have just accelerated pretty much quickly right now.
Jen, you were nodding in agreement.
Yes, because when Rama was talking about how we are increasingly more mobile, although that's already expected, I was also recalling to one of the research papers I've also read recently to say that people on average are spending 30 to 40% more of their time consuming digital content. So when I say digital content, it does not necessarily mean browsing more Facebook, more Instagram. I'm talking about spending more time on YouTube and TikTok, spending more time on streaming services like Netflix and other online TVs out there, reading more articles, playing more online games, watching live streams like they're listening to podcasts. And things like that were topics that we were just saying, yeah, people still need time to get used to it, and people are doing on it. But what's more interesting is that many people expect these activities, these digital activities, to be mainly skewed towards the Gen Z, the younger generations, especially when we talk about TikTok or Instagram stories, right? It was always disregarded as, yeah, these are things for the young people. If your brand is not there, just ignore them and so on and so forth. But this particular season have seen an increase or a shift between the percentages of all these different age groups. In fact, we have, if I recall the numbers correctly, we have seen an increase even among the boomers, the Gen X and the millennials. And in total, this surpasses the amount of consumption of the Gen Zs when they talk about online streaming services. This means that not only the younger generations are consuming all this content, but our parents and grandparents are also on it, and they're more active than it was before. So this is definitely one of the I would say one of the trends that we've also noticed in terms of video consumptions or media consumptions online.
Right. Simon, what about you? Any new trends that you've noticed?
Yeah, so I'd like to complement Jan's comments on the streaming world with the broader sort of e-commerce space, right? So we did a consumer and marketer survey we just published in August. So we had 4,000 consumers across APAC and 1,000 marketing practitioners across APAC. So we got a lot of findings out of that. And just picking up on what Jan was saying, I think first of all, this survey was also run in the US, so we have that comparison to the US market as well as Asia. And we have to remember that Southeast Asia is more mobile first than anywhere else, right? So that's a key thing which tends to get missed when people are looking at data and trends. And I'd say that's definitely accelerated. But what we got from the survey was 58% of consumers increase their online shopping frequency, and 75% said they're going to stay that way. They're going to do more in the future. But as Jan mentioned, from a demographic perspective, it was the younger generation that said, I'm going to stay shopping online. The older generation said, I'll probably go back to normal afterwards, right? Certainly from a practitioner point of view, the marketers in Asia definitely said they're more likely to make long-term changes to their marketing practices than US people did. So the US people said, oh, this is just temporary, we'll do more on digital and then we'll revert back to the old way. But in Asia, people see a sustained change in moving more to digital marketing.
Right. For those who have just joined us, this is episode 3 of the Enterprise Back to Business webinar series, and we are discussing marketing in the new norm with Rama from Entropia, Jan from OpenMinds Resources, and Simon from Adobe. Now, I want to talk about some of the work you guys have been doing over these last few months. Maybe you can share with us some of the standout campaigns that you've worked on recently. I mean, it doesn't have to be big money, but big impact, if possible. Jen, let's start with you now.
Sure. I think during this period of time, we have seen quite a rise of e-commerce related campaigns, meaning e-commerce stores, no matter of their size, really trying to take advantage of the stay-home situation that most of us are actually in within this particular region. And we have helped some of clients ranging from home appliances all the way to health supplements. And some of these clients have seen a 10 times return in terms of investment, which is something that we have never actually seen prior to the pandemic. People are really willing to spend and all of that. This has actually helped a lot of brands to actually stay relevant. And this is not just about going on e-commerce. I think many people have been talking about that. But what we have also tried to help our brands explore within this period of time was one of the areas were live e-commerce, how you are able to pick out key components of key products and services that you can bring it online through a live setting like what we're experiencing right now to start selling and start highlighting some of the key values or the key offers that you can bring to the audience in a live setting. So interaction is done via comments, interaction is done, payment is done using e-wallets, everything happening on screen right now. Very akin to how the home shopping TV setting was many, many years back, if some of us can still remember.
Right.
But live e-commerce was one setting. What we also did and also helped in terms of conversion was the ability to automate some of the conversations that were taking place. So especially when we work with the smaller businesses, this is always a main problem that they come back. They always say, hey, Jen, this live e-commerce thing sounds good. E-commerce sounds good, but who is going to handle the comments that's coming in? Who is going to handle all these inquiries? I can't just sit down and spend an entire day responding to all them. It's crazy. And when we help them and introduce some of these tools to them, automation tools like chatbots, trying to translate some of their frequently asked questions to be answered digitally, this actually increased the uptake, not just traffic to their website, but even more inquiries towards some of the other products that they carry. This has helped quite a number of brands gain not just brand awareness, but also sales during this period of time.
What about you, Simon?
Well, look, we help people to execute campaigns, right, with our tools. And what we're seeing is, as I mentioned earlier, a significant increase in trying to use the data to personalize that experience, right? So the survey told us, and we talked about it earlier, that making content more relevant and helpful is important, but also putting it in the right place at the right time also has to be considered, right? And that's where the data can come in quite useful. And to Jan's point, right, there's a lot of data out there being generated from this customer interaction, but are you capturing it? Are you storing it in a way that you can make use of it? And the example of capturing all your frequently asked questions and then turning that into a chatbot, it's a typical example, right, where automation can help deal with this deluge of data. And I think we've said about it before, this acceleration aspect of, we've seen people who've had adequate digital channels, but not robust enough or scalable enough, that have failed or have struggled through the crisis. And that's really accelerated people's understanding of, hey, this is now something that needs to be always on. It needs to be super modern. It needs to be super responsive. And so it's having the robustness of that service and then the content agility to come through and be dynamic enough to respond to how the market's going on.
Right. Rama, what about you? You've had an interesting few months at Entropia.
Yes, I think what Simon mentioned and Jan about e-commerce and the use of data in a very much more relevant way, storage and personalizing of services. There is one recent campaign, in fact, it's ongoing right now, which was a product of a pandemic and a consumer need. And this was essentially, we launched the BMW X5 in augmented reality. Okay, and the core insight was simple, that this sales model of automobile sales is dependent on showroom visits, where you get to go to the showroom, you look at the model, you feel comfortable, it's a high purchase item, so you need to have that physical touch. But obviously this pandemic during the MCO, nobody was able to go to a showroom and see this launch. So what we did was we created almost everybody's home into a virtual showroom by bringing it in. And this was all done without just using an app, because app-based AR has been there, still not that great, but now web-based AR through a link where there's no download required. You just click and the car is sort of magically appears in front of you. You can tweak around, you can tap in and see all the features, the hybrid features, etc. And the e-commerce element is click to book a test drive or click to get more details or meet with the salesperson. That is something which I feel is long overdue in terms of where the bricks and mortar physical retail spaces have been rethought. And to Jan's point was that e-commerce by virtue, the definition itself has already sort of bypassed that phase and gone in. So this BMW example that we are just currently running the campaign is one of it, where this it's a post-pandemic campaign, you can say, or ongoing pandemic campaign.
Right. We have a question from Facebook from Michelle, and this is in relation to Jan's reply. And she says, many brands are jumping on the e-commerce bandwagon. What do you think brands are doing wrong?
So
Jan,
I assume that I'll be
this.
taking that. Yeah, I would assume so. Well, I think Simon kind of did answer this question earlier as well. I think there are three immediate areas I can think of that brands are kind of doing wrong when you go into e-commerce. And the first one is, as Simon has mentioned, not really using the data. They are not tracking what are the frequently asked questions. They're not looking at the clicks. Where are the people dropping out from, landing on? How much time are they spending going through the products? Are they using the right photos? Are they using the right descriptions? How many abandoned carts? I think many smaller companies or people jumping to e-commerce think they can just set up and forget. They just subscribe to a Shopify site, they just install a particular e-commerce tool and just assume that things will go fine without skipping the fact that they have to address the customer's change of behavior in this season. The needs have changed, what customers are actually looking for within the product. And they just conveniently just put it aside and think that technology alone will solve the problems that they're facing, but that's not the case. Now, the second thing here is that many people also approach e-commerce during this season in what we call a single track e-commerce approach, meaning that they only rely on a single platform, designing a website, launching it, and then crossing their fingers, hoping everything will go correct. The fact is that for e-commerce to work, despite the fact that many people are increasing mobile and more people are consuming content online, it's also required for brands and businesses to look into where else can they place their e-commerce presence at? Could it be an Instagram shopfront? Could it be in Facebook marketplaces? Could it be a partnership with the bigger marketplaces like Shopee and Lazada? Should they go on live e-commerce? What else can they do? Combining these three aspects, that would actually solidify the presence of e-commerce during this season.
Right. Simon, Rama, anything to add?
Yeah, if I could add to Jan's. I mean, when you look at this digital world of engaging and transacting with your customer, right? I think the basic principles of marketing of acquisition, conversion, and retention haven't changed, right? But there's now more of a science to taking the data and really getting into the details of how you can move a customer along that journey and keep that customer at the end, right? So that's something Adobe has practiced over the years as it's moved to becoming more of a cloud and a service provider company from a traditional product company. Now, part of our business is also providing a commerce platform. And to Jan's point, right, it's not just a website, right? We also, there's an engine for what we call headless commerce. And that allows multiple channels to be engaged on that commerce aspect and transact with the customer. And so I think that's an important one. One of the other things we found from the survey, right, is the channel does matter. And again, it's demographics, right? The younger people are more likely to unsubscribe from emails and stick to different kinds of channels, right? So it's another subtlety where the data comes into play and the science comes into play if you pay attention to it.
Right. Rama, do you have anything to add to that?
I completely agree with what Jan mentioned and the importance of data that Simon mentioned. Essentially, at the crux of it, everybody needs to be cognizant of how the channel is performing, how in individual channels, what is best for you, and what is the purpose that it serves for your entire value chain. And that is the most critical. And to answer to the question, what Michelle asked was essentially this point, that you're probably doing enough already, but do it better. So more does not mean that it is better. It just means that you need to be focused and please understand what works for you and what doesn't. And the whole acquisition to conversion, like what Simon mentioned, is very important to understand and analyze.
Right. Okay. If you're just joining us, this is episode 3 of the Enterprise Back to Business webinar series, and we are discussing marketing in the new norm. Rama, my next question is actually for you. Entropia focuses on imagination to create significant impact, right? Is there such a thing as too much imagination or too much creativity when it comes to marketing? Does marketing thrive on outlandish ideas, or must practicality always remain at the core of it?
That's a very interesting question. And if you ask there is too much of imagination, then the alternative question is there something called too much of intelligence? No, there's nothing called too much of imagination. Imagination is critical for everything. But the point about outlandish ideas and practicality and the balance, this is the balance that most of the agency or consultancies firms have to deal with. Like, they may have a great idea, but it faces a brick wall once it gets into the practical aspects. But I look at it in a different way. I see, again, going back to the basics of communication theory, there is a receiver, there is a sender, and there is a lot of noise in between. If your message has to be heard and distilled amongst that clutter, you have to be conversationally robust, that if people are not able to talk about you, or it does not touch somebody's heart, or it doesn't give them a reason to share you, then you are essentially lost. So if I take the term outlandish and I keep it, I turn it on its head and I say it's not about outlandish, but it's more about relevance. If it's relevant and it is doing its job of making people talk about it and share about it, I think the job is done. And that's the best way to break the clutter, because there's one way is brute force, that I can pump in millions and millions and get 70% SOV of the market and make people by the collar and hold them and say, hear me. But the other way is, which is more real and much more practical, is to use whatever budget we have and make people converse more about it. And that's where you would see lots of brand actually doing a lot in the market. And across the world, you would see that you're speaking about brands like Burger King, because they do outlandish stuff, as it's called, but we know about the campaigns that is going on. Back here, we are, as Entropia, the imagination to impact is very critical, because imagination without a result is just foolhardiness. So the balance is critical, and we are a company built on imagination and built on ideas and strategically relevant ideas which drive impact. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
It does. It does. This brings me to Simon. We had a conversation earlier this week in which you said that this is the time for creativity. Everyone knows the marketing tools and strategies, but creativity is what you need right now to stand out from the crowd. You were saying that to me earlier this week.
Yeah, and we've kind of put a bit of a spin on that. So we've created something called the CQ. So you've heard of EQ and IQ. You put the two together, then it's CQ, right? So we've come up with this little survey you can take to see how creative your quotient is and how you can learn from people who are first movers around what type of kind of CQ are you, and how are you leading, or can you learn from other people. And the key thing there is not just as a buzzword, but the fact that creativity in the digital space is different, right? I think to Rama's point, right, that there's a message, you can create a message, but when you bring in this use of data to personalize that message, you're differentiating it. You're cutting out the noise, you're cutting through the noise because you're being more precise. And it goes back to what we kind of talked about, is that empathy and getting more customer intimacy. And that's really now where creativity needs to land, right, in that customer intimacy part. One of the things we've done in Southeast Asia just recently as well along that is we tried to make more accessible all of our digital skills enablement and training around what is digital marketing, right? So there's an ASEAN SME Academy, for example, where we've posted all of our marketing automation training that everybody can get access to for free, and examples of how people can start to go on that marketing automation journey. And that's what we're trying to do is there's a certain amount of capability that you can start to understand how can this technology benefit me, and then you can start consuming some of it and applying it to your business. Right.
Now, Jen, don't kill me for this, but since we're talking about creativity, I want to ask you about TikTok. It's your not so favorite topic, but for some, TikTok has been the cure to loneliness. During these lockdowns, and some brands they've exploded thanks to the app. The virality of the content is undeniable, but some brands feel that they are perhaps too big for TikTok, or too distinguished for TikTok. What are your thoughts on this? Is TikTok for everyone?
Well, you have definitely put me on the spot here, bring up TikTok. But it's true. I mean, if you look at the consumption of micro video content in specific, data has clearly shown that there is a significant amount of engagement coming from that. In fact, it's reported to say there's 16 times of growth when it comes to micro video. So micro video comes down to your stories, your TikTok videos, anything under 60 to 30 seconds, right? So to answer the question whether it's for everyone, the short answer is pretty much no. TikTok, it's not for everyone. Now, but this is not so much of a reason of whether a brand is too big or whether a brand is overly distinguished or very reputable and TikTok kind of devalues the brand. It's not so much of that, but rather it's more of a matter of two things. The right audience, whether is there any relevance from your brand towards the audience that you're trying to target on TikTok. Because as a matter of fact, the audience on TikTok is relatively young, right? You're talking to teenagers, to college students, and it pretty much ends there. Yes, there's a bunch of the younger millennials are trying to get a hand of it. And if you are not able to bring your brand to a point where it resonates with them, then technically you're just wasting your time and resources on it. And number two, it comes back to, again, your brand's objectives on TikTok. This goes the same to all the different channels out there, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Instagram, whether it's Pinterest, Twitter, whatever it is, right? It comes down to what are you planning to get out of this investment towards TikTok? If you are trying to go into it and to get sales out of it, well, you're probably hitting on the wrong platform altogether. If you're trying to get conversions, you're trying to get leads, maybe not. But if you're trying to engage the younger audience, you're trying to create a certain level of brand awareness and brand participation to bring a more lively perspective towards your brand, then yes, maybe TikTok is something that you want to consider. Yeah, but definitely it's not a platform where you just collect, just because you want to sound cool and say, check out our TikTok account. Definitely not something like that. Go in with a strategy, go in with a clear audience, knowing that what kind of people that you want to reach out to, and what do you want to achieve as a brand over there.
All right, and since we're speaking about TikTok and video content, how important is it to have aesthetically acceptable visuals or good video and audio quality? Do businesses need to invest in good AV equipment to ensure they don't turn off consumers with subpar visual content? Would anyone like to take this?
Well, yeah, since I'm on TikTok, right, I can just share a little bit of my perspective towards this as well. Well, to be very honest, the requirements for audio and visual has changed in the recent months or recent years, especially with the rise of micro content. If you look at some of the more viral videos going out there, you look at the most shared videos out there, most of this content are usually shot very raw, right? It's a quality from a phone. The audio quality isn't the best as well because it's probably just from the native speakers over there. There's no additional hardware, and consumers have grown to kind of like this kind of a content so that they know it's real, it's unpolished, it's not like a production shoot, it's not from a studio, and that somehow brings a sense of credibility to the content itself. Now, but this does not mean that you can totally disregard visual and audio, visual especially, because we still live in a time where platforms, or rather consumers, still spend time on good quality content, good quality visuals. And that's why Instagram still continues to thrive, right? Why is it where some people tend to linger more on certain pages or follow certain brands? It's because of the visuals that they produce. Not just in terms of creativity, but the quality of the visuals. Maybe it's in a stop motion format, whether it's how it's being recorded, the colors within that's treated within the videos. All these do play a part, but it's not the only requirement for successful content in today's terms.
And if I can add to that, Audrey, so we recently did an event where one of our customers spoke. It's MediaCorp in Singapore, and they were sharing the story of their crowdsourced content, and also the fact that they couldn't send a professional camera crew with all their reporters everywhere now, or their reporters had to do things from home. So they were perfectly fine with more scrappier content, because it was still content, it was still good content. It didn't have to be perfectly filmed and perfectly light, and it was sometimes more authentic. So you don't have to aim for perfection. It's more if you want to get your message out and you've got that authenticity and the right kind of message with the empathetic side of things, then the technical perfection is not always absolutely necessary. That's what their view was, certainly.
Right. We have a question from Facebook by Adrian Chan, who says, and this is specifically on events, and he asks, more brands are running virtual events. Do you think it will ever outweigh the benefits of a physical event that a physical event can bring, and can it replace face-to-face interactions? Would anyone like to take this?
Well, if I can answer that from a B2B perspective, I think people still buy from people in a B2B world. They buy on trust. You have to establish trust. And to a certain degree, you can build that through virtual mediums. But there's still an element that eventually will be more face-to-face. I think I'll let the other two gents, Rama and Jan, talk more about the B2C side of things. But certainly in my years of B2B selling, right, you can only go so far in big transformational projects without sort of having that body language real-time kind of in-person experience to really make it a long-term relationship.
Rama?
No, actually, this is a very interesting question, and Simon has covered the B2B aspect. I'll add in some more that people do buy from people. And at the moment, we have, as a group, we have been conducting a lot of virtual events, and we have actually staged multiple product demos and events for our brands virtually. And there's a huge learning there that, yes, you cannot be talking to a bot, you cannot be talking to a non-human and still get that reaction. But people are perfectly okay to attend an event which is in a virtual space, but they still need somebody on the other side who is interacting with them through this. So it is just like taking a virtual space, taking a real space and converting into a virtual interactive event where people can still do exactly the same things that they were used to, but they are right now at the comfort of their offices or homes where they are logging in. So it is to answer that question, it is something that physical spaces will not go away. The answer lies in the middle. It is neither here nor there, but it is more important that as a consumer behavior, if I need a product demo from a B2B, or if I need a sales a pitch from a B2C perspective on ground, it can be replicated online, and there is no in terms of ROI, you would it's not like as if there is a decline on ROI if you're doing it virtually, as long as it's done right. There has to be a human empathy ingrained into that event, and it can't be just just cold and just go there and do your stuff. So yeah, so it's important, but it will not die off physical events.
Right.
Yeah, I
We
think
have
Rama
another-
took the words out of my mouth, because I just want to say one thing, and just to emphasize on the humanizing part, right? Because what we also found, very true to what Simon said, the B2B aspect, especially a large scale project, still requires certain interactions, physical interactions to take place. But I think it's also important to consider the type of event or the purpose of the event that's going to be conducted. I still believe that there are certain form of activities or certain types of events in certain industries that is still more beneficial doing it offline physically, right? The human interaction, the certain demonstration, the physical and the tactile touch towards that interaction actually will gain a lot more benefit rather than just running it through a screen. Right? Certain things can't be done, especially when it comes to a group discussion like this. I mean, a good example would be if all four of us would start talking at the same time, none of us will be able to hear anything, right? But if this happens offline, certain communication can still go through, right? So there's certain value in offline interactions. There's certain speed that can also still happen quicker offline than compared to online. Therefore, I don't think offline events could be 100% replaced by virtual meetings.
Right. We have another question on Facebook from Richard, who asks, do you think that some companies will revert back to traditional marketing methods once things get back to the old normal, or is this change permanent? I think he's talking about old school marketing, your no frills, straight to the point, old school marketing.
As I mentioned earlier, the marketers. So we surveyed 1,000 marketers, right? And those 1,000 marketers across APAC said that they would change. They see long-term change in their methods and practices is necessary.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with that. Can I just share a very quick example? Yeah, sorry. So what happened was that just a couple of weeks ago, there's this client of ours decided that he has tried enough of digital platform. It's been working well for him. And he says that right now people are back on the streets again. I'm going to revert to traditional marketing, and he spent a hefty sum in billboard advertising. 1 week later, he regretted and said, hey, Jen, I should have spent more on digital. The thing is that it's not just a question of brands wanting to revert to traditional marketing. I think, again, we need to consider what been the theme of today's discussion, which is where consumer sentiments are and the consumer's behaviors are at. If consumer behavior has moved from offline to online, spending more on traditional means may not make the best sense when it comes to dollars. And with the new behavior being more and more like a habit to a lot of us, this will be a consistent trend moving forward rather than say, let's revert to 6 months ago and leave January and February again. It's very unlikely that would happen.
Right, Rama.
Yeah, I mean, I was just saying that the use of word traditional, a lot of times I find it very offensive, because in my dictionary, there is only bad marketing and good marketing. There's nothing called traditional marketing or new age marketing. So reverting back to bad marketing, no. You have to evolve. Everyone will evolve. And this is, again, the biggest enabler that is happening. We are going through that phase. So the learning has to be used, because there is no playbook built for this. We are writing the playbook as we speak. So we cannot rely on past benchmarks of 10 years, 20 years, even last year. We have to create those benchmarks as we go. So I would say that there's no question about reverting back. If everybody wants to do reverting back to bad marketing, then yeah, that's their call. But yes, there's no traditional. There is a right way and a wrong way of doing it.
All right. Thank you for that. A penultimate question before we wrap things up. I attended a webinar by Adobe a couple of months back in which, Simon, you mentioned how more than half of brands that you've engaged in the Adobe survey, the APEC survey, had to shift their brand messaging due to COVID-19. And I just wanted to know that from your experience for all three of you, is this just in like visuals and language that described close interactions, or is it the general consensus that brands need to be more empathetic during this time, more authentic? That's like at least the standard that the audience expects. Rama, maybe we can start with you.
The standards of, sorry, I didn't get the last point.
The tone and messaging, is it like, yeah.
So, see, as I said in my opening remark, that there has been a shift in terms of how the empathy towards people, towards your audiences has enhanced during this time, because believe it or not, we are all very sensitive nowadays, and the kind of outrage that happens across social media and the kind of, brands, the whole aspect about lashing out against brands has increased. And we are living in a turmoil state where social media is garnering so much of impact to the outcome or to the results of a brand in terms of whether they do well or bad. So in that way, I think the tone and manner, again, going back to fundamentals, as long as you're being relevant, you are being empathetic to the consumers, understanding their needs, and working out of a deep-rooted insight rather than just fluff overview or putting technology ahead of core insights. That's where I would say that it's moving towards in the right direction if you're actually putting people first and using data. Now we have, like Simon mentioned, that the amount of data that is there in the hands of all the marketers is at unprecedented level. Mm-hmm. So it will be such a shame that despite having this and you're not using it to personalize communication, we are talking about one-to-one instead of the whole broadcast age is already gone. So me as a consumer, I'm looking for a brand to talk to me as an individual and not like a segment or somebody who's a urban 20 to 25. So it's personalized messaging, empathy in the communication design, and also agility in terms of changing it if things change around you. So these are the things I would feel that it is very critical to address.
Jen, what about you? What have you noticed about tone and messaging shifting over these last few months?
Definitely taking, again, the more human and empathetic route. This is very consistent. Again, I think this is one of the primary reasons why in my opening remarks as well, I mentioned that people are feeling a lot more stress and this sense of anxiety, and they jumped at every single thing. You just need to have a wrong terminology somewhere and they'll give you hell for it. Many brands have tried that, whether you're being over salesy, whether you're not following a particular SOP, whether you just mention something and people becomes very, very jumpy. So I think at this point of time, it's becomes very crucial for brands to look into their communication materials, to be extra sensitive. I would not go to the extent to say that you need to be 100% very safe, but the most important here is to be very human. Ensure that your brand is taking this opportunity to humanize your communications going out. This means where in the conversations that you have, try to reassure customers, what are you doing within this point of time? How are you navigating through? Whether are you putting customer serve in terms of safety, in terms of products? How are you coping as a company? Just showing a little bit more of the people behind the brand, driving the emotions that the brand carries, and also what resonates with the brand the most. And on the one-to-one approach, like Rama has talked about, right? Try to also take this opportunity to engage customers on a more personal level. Check up on them. I think a lot of brands, we have a huge bunch of database, right, in our EDMs and whatnot. In the past, we've always been just sending out promotions. Now is a good time to engage with them. We check up on them to say, hey, how are you doing? How can we help? What are you looking forward to going forward? Put in a bit of positive vibes, really trying to assure the customers that, hey, look, we are not just here to get sales out of you, but we are also journeying with you through this process.
Simon, anything to add to that?
Yeah, well, I think the good news is from the survey that we did, 2/3 of brands are getting it right. So the majority of consumers say, hey, we're happy with the level of communication. But 20% say that brands aren't communicating enough. So some brands are still holding back from working actively to get it right. And there is a correspondence between the text and wording and the utility of that message, right? So consumers, when it's been thought through in an empathetic way and it's made relevant, they continue to engage with that. They find it useful and they want more of it. But there's still that gap in some brands haven't gone into that and decided that's how they want to communicate with their consumers. And I'd say that's a key takeaway for those people who haven't taken the step yet.
Right. Okay, guys, we're going to have to wrap up, but one final question before I let you off the hook. Very quickly, do you have any advice for marketers out there during this time? How can they be more effective in this new norm? Rama, let's start with you.
Okay. I think one very simple advice I give to all my clients is that let's not be reactive, okay? Because we can plan things. The whole scenario, the way it is looking, does not mean that you cannot plan things. There is still a lot of credibility which is required in the market, and the brands can still do well if you go to the basics and unlearn some of the bad things that we have picked up over the last 10 years and relearn and bring back the hardcore marketing fundamentals in the new age. All right. So it's not about digital marketing, but it's marketing in the digital age. That's how I would like to give them as one piece of advice.
Jen?
I think primarily I always tell clients and friends around me, is to not stay silent during this period of time. Many people take this as an opportunity or an excuse to say, let's regroup, and spend months regrouping and trying to restructure things without doing anything outwards, with this fear that they will take the wrong step and do something wrong. I think that's not the right thing to do as well. I think you need to be able to find something to work on at this point of time. It could be really relooking to communications to reassure customers, as what I've just said, or look for different bits of tech to go through. I wouldn't use the term digital transformation, but really finding ways that you can improve in certain parts of your business. It could be customer service, it could be how you manage your team, how often you communicate with your customers, how you display your website, how do you increase the usability of it, and at the same time, whether there's any opportunities for you to take advantage of in learning. Many organizations, Adobe included, right, have tons of materials out there made available for many businesses, big and small, to take advantage of. It was never a time like this to learn, and therefore, don't stay silent. Really pick something up during this season. Use good use of this time to maximize what you can get out of this season.
There's no time like the present. That's why it's called the present. Simon.
Yeah, and actually, Jan set me up. I was going to say, go on your learning journey, right? Yes, we have tons of free stuff. I mentioned the SME Academy earlier. We also have this very global community called Experience League, where you can go and meet like-minded people and listen to their experiences and stories and see some of the events and customers who are sharing their experience maker journeys, right? And it is a journey. As Rama and Jan has said, don't be afraid of digital, don't be afraid of data, but go and look at it's a mature enough space now for you to find real stories of value people are getting from doing digital and data, right? And I'd say go on that learning journey, find it, take your first steps, and you won't regret it.
All right. On that note, thank you, gentlemen, for joining me this afternoon and for sharing your insights. I've been speaking with Ramakrishnan CN, Head of EXR and Partner at Entropia, Jan Wong, Founder of OpenMinds Resources, and Simon Dale, Managing Director, Southeast Asia at Adobe. Thank you so much, guys. And the BFM Enterprise Back to Business series is presented to you by Volvo Cars, redefining freedom to move in a personal, sustainable, and safe way. And today's episode is sponsored by Sony Malaysia. Don't forget to join us again next week, same time, same place, for episode 4 of the series on HR's Balancing Act. That's happening on Thursday, the 1st of October, 1:30 p.m. on facebook.com/BFM Radio. And just before you go, there is a feedback form posted in the comments section on Facebook. So please help us fill that up. And it's only 5 questions, but it can help us improve these webinar series. And I guess that's it. That's a wrap for us. Thank you again, gentlemen. And thanks for joining us. My name is Audrey Raj for BFM 89.9, the business station.